As gene editing becomes more commonplace in humans, there's an ethical debate about editing your children. As the very first human gene-edited embryos grow up, there's also the issue of designer babies reaching their teens, and many need therapy. Let's talk about it. In 2018, a rogue scientist admitted to his colleagues and to the scientific community that he had genetically edited human babies. Those children should be about 6 or 7 now, and reportedly they're doing fine. But a lot of people don't know the real story behind this. He, Jianku, gave his services to couples who were having problems with fertility. He also looked for people who had male HIV. This should not put children at risk from getting paternally associated HIV. In fact, that is incredibly rare. A washing process is done to make sure that the virus is not present in the cells that will be used for insemination. Nonetheless, he took these couples and edited their children's genomes to give them a variant that would make them resistant to HIV. It is still unknown if this was actually effective. There's no way for us to tell, aside from taking tissue samples and analyzing its susceptibility to HIV, but we don't really know. There is, however, major concerns when it comes to editing any genome. The methods that we have involve making cuts at specific regions in the genome, and if you've ever used CRISPR, you'll know that it often makes cuts in other locations that you didn't intend. There are new methods that are coming out that have more efficacy, but there are reasons that these are done under very specific circumstances, like some of the genetic therapies that have been done for things like sickle cell, as well as curing some forms of genetic blindness. If you are going to get something like this done, it's good to have consent, as well as being sure that not having therapy could be extraordinarily debilitating. While gene editing has been done in animal embryos for some time, editing for adult critters is pretty new. There may be long-term side effects and, honestly, tragedies that we haven't seen yet. As for designer babies, that's already happened. Parents who sometimes didn't even have fertility issues wanted a baby with certain traits. They wanted them to be athletic or tall, have blue eyes. So they picked a donor who had those traits, and it doesn't always turn out the way that you want. While there are certain genetic aspects to things like intelligence, it's not a guarantee that you'll raise your child that way. Psychologists have talked about dealing not just with these children who are now teenagers, but the parents as well who feel that they got a defective product. They paid all this money, and their child didn't end up musically inclined. To me, that sounds absolutely insane, but it's not all that uncommon, and the children who come from these situations end up feeling like furniture, or a car that their parents purchased and were not able to return because it didn't have a warranty. When prospective parents want to undergo this process, they need to be counseled that they're making a human being, not a car that you can test drive and then maybe return. That is your child. I think we're about to see many more stories like this in the near future. With the advent of genetic engineering for people's offspring becoming more commonplace, I assure you people will try to give their children the traits that they want. There may also be the issue that this will result in a stratification in society between those who could afford to genetically edit their child and those who can't. We've already identified genes for things like intelligence. That may actually work. And there's going to be societal issues that we're going to have to face as human beings that we've never faced before. Proponents of genetic engineering have said that we could probably wipe out many of the causes of disease. Genetic causes for things like major depression, type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, as well as major debilitating diseases that there's no other way to cure, like Sanfilippo. I've helped parents get in touch with clinical trials because we are talking about a fatal condition and the only hope is genetic engineering. But what if we could go into that embryo before that child ever had this condition and fix it? Yes, it is compelling, and I can see a lot of good that this could do. But you better be damn sure you know exactly what that gene does, and you are targeting the correct one. Oftentimes, we find genetic variants that are associated with diseases, even ones that have a very, very high correlative value. That does not mean that you're targeting the correct gene. Many genes are linked. Many genes interact with each other, and going in directly into human beings and doing this stuff is not a very good idea. We do not want to experiment on people. There are significant risks, and I'm on the fence about this one. I can see the good that it can do, but I know that we're opening up Pandora's box. Once it starts, it's not going to slow down, and we have yet to see the outcomes, and there will be bad outcomes. There always is.
Are eukaryotic cells more complex than the tiny prokaryotes swarming in the culture?